Well, so we were just talking about it's an interesting game that we're in, and I think the first time I spoke with you is right around when I started doing this full time, and not that I have this figured out at all. Actually, ironically, this week is starting year three of
Oh,
so completing 2 years,
yeah.
starting year three, and when I started actually doing the podcast audio only 8 years ago, I thought to myself, well, if I get people with big Instagram, I wasn't even on Twitter yet, big Instagram followers, and they just share it, and let's say they have 10,000 followers, well, at least 10% will watch it. That's what I thought. Like, I'm like, well, not yeah, which I think that's a fair number. Probably a little bit more than 10%, maybe 12%. Yeah, that's not how this works.
No, I guess you can kind of get Substack to work like that now because it's a pretty committed email list following, But yeah, not so much on social media. But hey, it's funny. I used to think the same thing. Like I remember reading, I think it was like the Wikipedia page about Eric Erickson, who I haven't, followed in a decade or more. But it was like, oh, he had 100,000 person email list. He's super influential. And I remember being like, oh, if only I could get like 100,000 followers on something, I'd be, set for life. And, I have a large-ish Twitter following, and it's fun, but uh, not what I imagined when I first read that years ago.
Well, and you also, I hate the word influencer and I hate the word entrepreneur. Oh, those words they just made me cringe. Like,
Hmm.
and now my friends do it to screw with me because I hate it. Like, I just hate all that stuff. I hate content creator. I
Hmm.
just, and even somebody was asking me the other day, because, people that are my age or older, they think I don't have a job and I just get paid to do nothing all day type of thing. Like, do you
Yeah.
get that? You're like,
Oh
you're
yeah.
gonna be,
I just tell people I do digital marketing because that's like true, and they have like a vague conception of what that means. Whereas if I told them I was writing about Rhodesia on the internet, they would just be horrified and walk away. So.
well, but also too is like, what I'm doing now. I mean, my last job I was in sales and healthcare, and I was showing PowerPoints to clients. So,
Hmm.
on Microsoft Teams. So I
Oh.
mean, really now I have to prospect to find people, because I want to
Hmm.
keep growing and evolving my audience and evolving my guests. But it's not that different. It's just I'm not showing you a PowerPoint over the next hour and a half. We're just talking. So, but
Right.
but it's funny though. Also, like younger people think like they step into this world and they think it's just so easy, and resharing and reposting, and we were talking about that a little bit offline. And yeah,
Hmm.
that stuff helps, but that's not going to just catapult you. And the other thing is too, you know, just because you get you have built up a following on one platform like X, that doesn't translate that people are going to watch your videos on YouTube.
Right. I was talking to a guy about this recently, just, offline chatting because he was starting out and wanted some business advice or, advice about what to do for social media stuff. And one thing we went back and forth about for a bit is it's really kind of like that book, Winning the Loser's Game, which is about investing and about how you really just don't want to go to zero at any point because that's, so much worse than a low return or a bad one return one year by being a little bit cautious. And I think a lot of people who get into the social media, or to use a term you hate, influencer space, which I would never say that word organically, but now that I know you hate it, I feel the need to work it in. But a lot of people really just can't do that, where they'll be pretty good for a bit and then just have a total crash out about some minor issue and blow up their whole account, and then it's over. And I find it continually astounding that people do that, but it is a big thing, particularly as you mentioned with, younger people who want to get into it and, have interesting, good things to say, but really have trouble with like the discipline and consistency part of it. I found is a big thing with internet business type stuff. People just really have trouble doing the the things they ought rather than just the parts that are fun.
Well, and people don't understand either and you know this better than I do. I mean, it's a lot of work. Like
Yeah.
and there is no. Somebody said to me, they were like, isn't it nice when you travel, you don't have a PTO schedule? And I said, I don't. First of all, I didn't even think of it like that. But the other thing is, when I go somewhere, I take my stuff with me, and it's all
Mhm.
setting, driving somewhere or flying somewhere, or if it's not business related, I'm like, all right, I got to figure my schedule so that way I'd rather do it on a Saturday because the likelihood something's going to pop up that I'm going to record, or I don't know. I'm just and I'm and you, instead of being a slave to other people, you find yourself a slave to yourself.
Right. At least it's building something which is fun and it's like an asset. And it's also just, I think, much more fulfilling than being enthralled to someone else. But it is like I find vacation so much more stressful than normal life because it means I have to do so much more ahead of time and just it throws everything off. So I much prefer just, getting all my work done in the morning and doing something in the afternoon than like going on some vacation and being stressing out about having stuff scheduled for the various business lines I'm in. It's just a completely different mindset. But yeah, I think one thing that's been good about the creator economy or whatever they call it now generally is more people getting used to that and more people getting used to, building something for themselves and being more responsible than when it's just straight corporate employment where you're living the office space life and hoping no one comes by with a TPS report. So there are upsides and downsides, and I quite prefer this to that. But it is people like don't understand the work side of the equation and the consistency side of the equation, which not to complain about it because I really enjoy it and I'm lucky to get to do it. So it's not a complaint. It's a very different mindset.
No, it's an incredible privilege, but I think you said exactly how I feel. It is incredibly stressful. I don't know, and maybe that's not the right word, but like it is a sense of stress when you know you're leaving somewhere, especially if you're flying,
Hmm.
and you're trying to get like all your stuff done, edited. Internet at hotels are usually not as good as like what I have here, like in
Hmm.
relation to Substack or just all of that stuff done and loaded up on my hard drive and then packing and then worrying about on the road. All right, where can I record? Where can I finding a quiet space is much more difficult than I think people
Hmm.
realize when you're on the road.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like the air conditioners in hotel rooms are awesome because they work really well, but super loud and never really noticed that until I was trying to record something in one of them one time. Yeah. I remember right before I took the bar exam, I was trying to like schedule out something and I was like, you know what? Let today be a wash. I shouldn't be worrying about this right now. So anyway, yeah, it's fun. It's different.
But it also proves so too is like I've been in this camp of like the sky's gonna fall, and I mean I never really thought we'd have Mad Max or the original Red
Hmm.
Dawn from 1985, showing my
Oh
age.
yeah.
Uh,
Great movie.
it is a great movie. I love the end of that movie where like nobody's shoot. Charlie Sheen's dead. Patrick Swayze's carrying his dead brother, and you still hear machine gun fire in the background, and you're like, "Who are they shooting at? There's nobody shooting at him anymore." like, what, like,
Yeah.
and then they have Apache helicopters. They're looking for five people, and they just can't find them in the mountains right above the town, and they
Oh
have
yeah.
to.
I forgot that. Yeah.
They can't find. They got like three Apache helicopters for five people, and four of them still managed to get away. It's amazing.
Hmm.
like, but with that, I think as a country, I'm not optimistic, but I also on the individual level, and I think testimonial to that is you can have success, and you can
Hmm.
grow your business, and in your personal life, you can go out and accomplish things and get ahead, and that's where I try to. I'm trying to even just have hopefully people get that sense from me more. And maybe I was failing to communicate that. But I think you're an example of that, Will.
Oh yeah, there are a lot of examples, far better than me. I'm a modest success at best, but yeah, I found reading history is really enlightening in that respect because, there was a certain sense of there being more opportunity in some ways in America in say 1850 than now. Like there's less regulation, there wasn't direct taxation, so if you struck it rich, you could, improve yourself pretty quickly. But on the other hand, there's so much opportunity now, and there's so much available for agentic people who want to better themselves and want to do something. That like pull yourself up by your bootstraps line gets mocked so much. And at a societal level, it's probably wrong, but people who do want to like do better or do something or build something, I think now can do so better than ever and with a lot of ability to avoid the supporting infrastructure that used to make it so difficult. Like building a steel plant, if you're trying to compete with Carnegie, would be much more difficult than just opening an account on Twitter.com right now. They're not the same thing, but that opportunity is there. And I think it'd be better if people, instead of just complaining about, whatever, went out and tried it and tried to do something and tried to build something because that's what Americans used to do. Half the country was self-employed as late as like 1900. And that agentic strain used to really be part of our identity. So, maybe that's something that's good that will come with the AI stuff is there's a lot of doomerism about how it's going to erase jobs. And that's probably true. Like I doubt there'll be as many spreadsheet jockeys in 20 years as there are now. But I don't know if that's necessarily a bad thing. Some of those jobs pay well, some don't, but they're all horrible, and the people who do them hate their lives. It'd probably be better if they were building something, and now they have more opportunities to do so than they did in 1980. So I think I also would get drawn into the doomerism is where I was trying to go with that and be like, oh no, the debt situation's bad. We need to worry about it. Who knows? But I do think there's a lot of opportunity there, and there's a lot of stuff that is hopeful and good that is happening. It's not all bad. So I think it'd be better if people focused on building something and creating something and doing something if they're all worried about their future rather than just complaining and critiquing.
What does agentric mean, Will?
Oh, having personal agency, being willing to go out and do things rather than uh, hope, wish, or think that something is going to happen to you.
It's another word I hate is hope.
Yeah.
Because you know what? Let's sidestep for a second. We should go through all the words that I hate right now. I just cringe. And not because hope is it's not a bad thing, but after Trump got reelected, it was all this hope, Elon, superheroes, hope. My hope is this. My Kennedy. My hope is this. I was like, I can't stand that word because of it. And I'm going to quote my friend Michael Yan. Hope is not a strategy. Matt Bracken says that too. Hope is not a strategy.
Yeah, it's not. It's like the opposite of being agentic or the I forget who said it, but it was such a good point and an obvious one, but well put that if you're the sort of person in the year of our Lord 2026 who's willing to just go out and do something one day and like actually try and make it happen, whether it's getting 5 people together to have a drink or, building a business online or starting a moving company or, like whatever you can imagine being, if you're the sort of person who can actually do that and put the like 3 pieces together to make it happen, you're the top 1% of people who like do things now. Just everyone wants to sit around and not do anything. And then as you're talking about with hope, they'll hope that something happens. They'll hope that, they get invited to whatever. I don't know what it's been, but the past like 6 months have just gotten me so frustrated with that mindset and the sort of people who embody it. Cause I just don't get it. Like if you're going to be depressed all the time, what's the point? Anyway. Yeah,
what have you
complain about that forever?
What over the last 6 months has stuck out to you that you're seeing this pattern in people? Because I see it too, so that's why I'm.
Yeah, I used to listen to more political podcasts. I still listen to yours, and Jay Burden.
Thank you for that. Yeah, you know what, Jay Burden and I just connected. So,
oh really?
I'm going on his, I think next week, and then I think I want to have him on mine.
Oh, you should. He's wonderful. Yeah, I like many of his episodes. I like a lot. There are a couple guests I don't really listen to, but generally his is solid.
I just listened to, not to interrupt you, but I just listened to most of his conversation with Lucas Bakken and formerly T-Rex
really
Arms. Yeah, I had his brother Isaac on 3 or 4 years ago, and Josh Lowry and Drew Hernandez. I think it's Drew Hernandez not Hernandez. Drew and Josh were part of T-Rex, and now they have their own channel on YouTube called Dirty Civilian.
Oh yeah,
great guys.
Is it like a gun tube thing or like gun related show?
Yeah, and they do like I don't know, Out in the Woods or be honest, I don't watch a lot of their stuff.
Yeah, I'll check them out.
Drew, cool. I can't think of his last name. It's not Hernandez. Drew Hernandez is a journalist. I have to look it up. Now I got to look it up to make sure I correct it. But Drew is great guys. But yeah, Jay Burden, I can't wait to talk to him. This episode is brought to you by Vaulted. Launched by McIlvaney Financial Group. The simplest and most affordable way to own physical gold and silver. Physical gold is the only asset outside of the control of the government and banking system. They can print dollars, but they can't print gold. Click on the promo link in the show notes or go to vaulted.blbvux.net/coffeeandamike.
Yeah, he's great. But to talk about the past couple months, like the total crash out in the political podcasting space about Trump has been something to behold and so ridiculous. Like you have the line about superhero movies and about how we don't live in a superhero movie, which is such a good point because it's like people imagined that the caricature of Julius Caesar was coming to office to fix everything on like day one and wasn't going to be some mix of like compromises and basically fine policies and some terrible policies and it's been a mix of things as one should have expected and could have expected. But the like total freak out over everything he does and the constant need to say, "Oh, everything is lost." Like, have you watched Lord of the Rings movies?
I never saw the Hobbits, but the original three, yeah.
Yeah, they're the original ones. Remember at the end or towards the end of the third one where Denethor like sets himself on fire and like runs off the top of the mountain screaming? It's like that every week about just minor things. It'll be like some revision to the H2B policy that'll be generally positive, but not the maximalist one. And it'll be Denethor jumping off the mountain, or it'll be that some drug boat got blown up and you'll have people who claim to be on the far right and love death squads, complaining about some fentanyl trafficker getting killed. I don't get it. And I found it super frustrating and just like the continual panic attack and freak out and, oh, we're all going to die. It's all lost. We all need to give up now. It's so ridiculous and frustrating. And it's essentially like feminine in nature. I can't stand it. So I've unsubscribed from most political podcasts because they just drive me insane. Yes. Sorry, I could go on about that forever.
No,
and just
no,
be
I find it super interesting because literally you're saying things that I've been thinking about. So you articulate it a lot better than I would. It's probably because you're a law scholar, your academic
I
background.
wouldn't say that. I managed to muddle through that.
Your vocabulary is a lot more broader than mine. Drew Hopkins is the guy's name that I was referencing.
But that does sound familiar. Okay.
But so I was just talking about this the other day because it's like, all right, so now we're coming into 24 again, right? And I have not been following this probably as long as you have and others did. People have been following it 20, 30 years plus. Mm-hmm. But you start hearing the same things again, right? First of all, like now we're on the precipice of a war in Iran. Okay. So I'm going to go back 3 years ago when Iran was firing those drones to the Iron Dome. Mm-hmm. And I remember, I think it was May. It was April, May. It was warm here in Arizona where I live. It was like early summer. Maybe it was in June. But I remember watching it was on a Saturday afternoon and thinking, I better go fill up my gas tank because this is happening right now. And then it was like a July 4th fireworks show. Like a bunch of drones got fired, nobody died, nothing, mm-hmm. and that was it. So then you go to the 12-day war, right? Mm-hmm. Last summer. This is it. United States drops bombs. They destroy the nuclear facilities. Iran drops they fire back. This is it. Well, mm-hmm. and then you're looking at it and I was like, okay, I've seen this movie before. Like, okay, wink, wink. You drop your bomb here. We'll blow up an empty military base. And that's it. Like, yeah. So now here we are again. The Armada's there. Look, maybe something will happen. I don't know. What do I know? But I'm not going to subscribe to. I don't think anything will happen. One, it's an election year. Two, it's not anyone's benefit. You've got 90 million plus people that live in the country of Iran. So you're going to have refugees from all over flooding out of the country into these neighboring Arab states, and I'm assuming they don't want that to happen. So I don't see that occurring. But again, I could be wrong. Even Venezuela. You thought Venezuela was going to be some big thing. They go in there, pay whoever they needed to pay off, apparently, and then grab him and his wife, and that's it so far.
Yeah.
So, so you have that aspect. Now we're back into the will the midterms happen? I'm like, okay, didn't we? In 24, Doug McGregor. Yeah. So I don't even listen to him anymore because I remember thinking at the beginning of 24, I'm like, oh, this is a colonel. He's on these biggest shows. He was on Patrick Bet-David saying if we even have an election. As we got into the summer, I'm like, wait a minute, we're gonna have an election. Like, we're not like. But I'm hearing this again with the midterms.
Yeah, we're supposed to, at this point, like the whole Eurozone should have melted down into nothingness 2 years ago. The elections shouldn't have happened like 5 times now. We're supposed to be in multiple world wars. Maybe some of it will eventually happen. suppose. But for one, you can't organize your life around freaking out, whatever the freak out of the moment is, because then you'll just be insane. As not Colonel McGregor and some of the other people might just be wrong, and that's fine. But a lot of people you see on Twitter are just like actively insane at this point and have been driven into it by their own, just need to be neurotic on social media. And if you organize your life around freaking out about something constantly, that's just how you're going to be. That's like the right-wing Twitter equivalent of being a leftist cat lady. And I don't understand it, and it's certainly not like healthy as a person to be like that. So I've just tried to tune it out. Like, maybe it'll happen. It probably won't, and I'm not going to worry about it because all of this stuff has happened before. Like when America invaded Grenada in 1985 or 6, whenever that was, I did that. Maybe 83. Did that end the world? No. When America sank the entire Iranian Navy in 1987, I did that end the world? No. And there are differences. I mean, they probably are closer to having a nuclear bomb now than they did then, but it was also just something that, whether you wanted it to happen or not, didn't end up being that big of a deal on the long term and, wasn't worth clutching your pearls and blowing up your personal life over then. And I don't think it is now either. So I don't know. I've just tried to tune it out because I find it tiresome and unhealthy to be worried about those things constantly and just constantly be high strung about things that probably won't happen. And even if they do happen, won't be the worst case scenario that people pretend they are.
Yeah, I mean, do you remember when Biden got elected? And I'll admit, I was in this camp. Somebody just wrote a comment on my Apple saying the host willingly admitting his ignorance. Get a library card, dude, which I thought was funny. He gave me a 5-star, whatever the highest star. But yeah, so whoever that is, if you're listening, I thought that was hilarious. You can't respond to those though, which sucks. But you remember in 2020, and I do believe that election was stolen. But the sky didn't fall. I mean. It was bad, the fact that you had a president that couldn't speak, but the country didn't fall. There wasn't anarchy. There wasn't. I mean, all these things that people thought were going to happen, that didn't happen.
Yeah, the thing they did was let in all the migrants, which is bad, but hopefully can be reversed. And that's like the point of participating in the political process is to then now try to remove them. But was it worse that Reagan gave 3 million illegals amnesty or that Biden let in probably 10 to 12 million of them? I don't know. Both are terrible. And some of the stuff, if you can organize your life around not having to deal with the consequences, that's probably a wise thing to do. Like if you're considering moving to Memphis or East St. Louis, that's probably a bad decision and you shouldn't do that. And you can live in Central Tennessee instead and be far happier. And, I think that's a reasonable thing and you should be cognizant of the problems with crime in the inner cities, where if you look at the homicide rates of America's like top 15 cities, the death rate for civilians in those is far worse than in the Ukraine war. You're much more likely to die as a civilian in St. Louis or Detroit or Baltimore than you are in the Donbass, which is crazy. So, you should try and avoid that. But the like constant panicking and Chicken Little, the sky is falling routine from like so many people in the podcast scene has really just gotten me annoyed and caused me to tune out. So yeah, it's frustrating and I don't really understand it because it's not like anyone who does that's life has gotten better. I guess unless they're collecting the ad revenue since they started doing it, they just seem more neurotic, less happy, less fulfilled in life.
Well, and all the all the clicks and likes right now too. I mean, because I pay attention to this, what other people are doing, and the whole superhero, as because you listen, superhero, City of London. I don't get any of that stuff, and I know I'm gonna probably get some shit for this, but I don't understand it, and then the whole Trump is behind the scenes and Besson and I mean, you know what? If all this happens, I'll be the first one to admit I'm wrong, just like I was about the 24 election, but. That's the other side of this too, that you're seeing people are just grabbing this stuff right now. And it's just so funny to me, like a superhero movie.
Yeah. Like, do you know Charles Haywood?
Yeah, I had him on a long time ago.
Okay. Yeah, I like him because he'll make predictions, and then whenever the prediction is supposed to have played out, he'll go back and review whether he got it correct or got it wrong and explain why he thinks like that happened, whether it was, a good prediction or a bad one. And most of them haven't really played out. But I think it's worth seeing that because then I'm able to update my mental model based on it. And I'm also not too attached to any of the predictions because enough of them have been wrong. But I think he's a smart guy and kind of has a good way of viewing the world. So it's worth paying attention to. But a lot of people make these hysteric predictions about the world ending on like June 13th this year, and then that day comes and passes, and it's like the old apocalypse cult, where it's like, oh well, it was revealed to me in a dream that it's actually going to happen next year, and please keep giving me money in the interim, and it's whatever. If it's a business for them, then fine, but I think it's not worth paying attention to.
Somebody messaged me in regards to the magnetic poles and what is the the magnetic
Oh yeah,
shift,
that's
the
supposed
earth
to happen.
shift and magnetic
Yeah.
poles. I said they said you should get, I think, Cliff High, isn't that, I think that's what he focuses on.
Oh, I don't know.
Yeah.
I've heard about it, but I don't.
Yeah. So I I was like, and I had Ben Davison on a few years ago. Nice guy. But look, if that stuff happens, there's nothing I can do about it. Like literally nothing I can do about it. So, and you know what? I
Yeah.
don't want to survive that if that occurs. I don't.
Yeah.
What would this world look like? So take me. Same with a nuclear bomb. If a nuclear bomb is going to happen, put it right where I live in Phoenix. I don't want to live through that. I mean, unless it's going to be like the other side of the world or something. I mean, I hope it doesn't happen. But
Right.
who wants to live through that?
Yeah, it's like prepping. Like, you should have some stored foods that if the power goes out for a week, you don't like die. That's probably good. You should have a way of filtering some water for the same reason, and have a gun in case someone breaks into your house, or if you like guns, that's great. But like to think that not you, but people listening, is like a Twitter poster who's not that like powerful or agentic, or really does anything of note right now, are going to be like a warlord in this strange apocalyptic future that confirms all of your hyper specific ideological qualifications for why you should really be in charge, and like that's going to happen from some societal disaster. It's just insane. Like in most of these situations I'll probably die. I'd prefer not to, but if there's a nuclear war and there are like cannibal gangs roving around like it's the road, then I'm not gonna survive that. Like I'm just okay. Well, I'll try and fight it out, but I'm gonna die, and I don't need to base my entire life on, having enough baked beans to make it through 30 years of nuclear winter, because I'll just, there'll be a loot drop for someone else. So, yeah, I think a lot of the people who get caught up in that, it's like, well, I hate my ex-wife's new boyfriend, so I'm gonna become convinced that a civil war is happening so that I can think about getting a chance to shoot at him, and more power to you, man, but I don't need to base my entire life and ideology off of, your marital squabbles. It's all of this, the only reason I even talk about it, because I hate getting like caught up in the online drama, is I used to be so into some of this stuff, like, oh no, the debt collapse is like happening now. I need to be prepared for this. And none of it happens. And it's all, if you get too caught up into it, you can make some very, fortunately I didn't, but you can make some very poor decisions for yourself financially and personally based on believing the delusions of schizophrenic people on the internet. So, you shouldn't do that. Read a history book. Preferably don't watch like Netflix, because it's all just terrible propaganda. But, find a different way to occupy yourself. Learn how to fly fish. You'll be much happier and better for it.
I like what my friend Dave Collins says when talking about like a revolution of gangs roaming the streets. He goes, I'm at a point in my life, I'm just going to do what I can and head towards the light. I don't know why. I just find that so funny, because if you know Dave, I mean, that's so him. Like,
Like, did you ever watch the show Doomsday Preppers?
no.
It was super entertaining because you feel bad watching it because they're all crazy, but
Oh, is it a reality show?
oh yeah, it's not on anymore because the last episode they were profiling this like militia in Louisiana that was convinced the world was going to end soon. And so this group, they had the whole like compound fortified. They were putting explosives in the like old cars they had around the perimeter to blow up. They built a gallows in the middle of their camp and were hanging mannequins to practice hanging people. And the show got canceled after that, but it's like, well, you probably shouldn't be doing that. Like, you probably have a right to. I don't know about the laws in Louisiana, but even if it's fine, just in what way is your life going to be made better by doing these things? You could, I don't know. I think it's really frustrating to me seeing the sort of people who push the like hysterics and the neuroticism have others get caught up in their own delusions, because it does ruin a lot of lives and make a lot of people, worse off. So I would just encourage people to, listen to what you can and stay informed, and you shouldn't just be completely ignorant of current events or things. You should try and keep up with it, but to do it to the point of ruining your life is a big mistake.
Well, and then the last thing, on this topic is the Civil War, which I actually think we are in a civil war, just not the Civil War that, we were taught in school with the North South, ready, aim, fire, reload,
Yeah.
fire at will. like quoting everything from the movie Glory. You ever see that movie?
No.
Matthew Broderick and
I'm from
Denzel.
the South, so I don't like things from the Union perspective.
Oh, um, but you know, this whole idea of like that's going to be replicated. I, I I don't see that. You've heard that too.
It's so stupid. Like we saw this happen in the 1970s when America was a place that like, people were stronger back then. You didn't get the degeneration of modern times yet. And the left was carrying out like thousands of bombings a year. I think at the height of it, it was around 2,500 or 3,000 bombings in a single year. And that happened for the entire decade. It was just one of carnage. And the Black Liberation Army was assassinating police officers. The Weather Underground was blowing up bankers and police stations. The FALN was blowing up skyscrapers. That went on for decades, and that's essentially a state of civil war. The police union was talking about patrolling New York in tanks because it was so dangerous. I think that's what it would look like. It's essentially Ireland during the Troubles. I, to see states secede would just be such upheaval that no one has prepared for. That I don't think it's going to happen. Even if you do use the original Civil War as a framework, really the entire time from the nullification crisis in the 1830s to the breakout of the war itself was spent by both sides in preparing themselves. You had financiers in Boston supporting John Brown as he waged a civil war in Kansas and killed a lot of innocent people. You had the South organizing militias in pretty much every county at the county level for that entire time so that they'd be prepared for a call up to fight. Now, they didn't build the logistics infrastructure that would have helped them win because they wanted to, focus on their uniforms and stuff instead as Cavaliers, you know, but in any case, they were still preparing and they were organized. And so there was a coherent identity on both sides that could unite into a struggle in a grand way in which you actually had secession, you actually had sides, you had fighting. I mean, now the sort of people who'd be involved in it are like Antifa, the John Brown gun clubs, the similar constellation of leftist terror groups against like ICE and the police and maybe a couple like right-wing militias, maybe, which isn't the same thing. That's just like butchery in Latin America in the 1970s and 80s, or like the chaos in America in the 1970s. It's not a civil war, and it's also something that you can and should avoid by being prudent and being in the right areas. So I think if you're worried about anything, it should be the South Africanization of America and the narco tyranny, which again is something that you can organize your life around preventing in a way that's not super deleterious to yourself. Not about like being drafted into the Neo-Confederate Army to like march on Minnesota to make them deport 12 illegals from McDonald's or something. That's probably not going to happen.
Well, and also though too, well, a couple things. One, do you wonder what would have happened if the South would have won against the North in the Civil War? What would this country be like today, do you think?
It's hard to tell. I think on one hand, the abolitionist sentiment is the unpredictable factor, where if you look at what happened that led to the war, and there's a really good book on this called A Disease in the Public Mind, or The Disease in the Public Mind, about the kind of the abolitionist sentiment that led up to the war and how it just caused chaos and caused both sides to calcify and hating each other. And had the South won, on one hand, that could have just been completely dismantled as an ideology because it proved so ineffective and harmful to the country. And had that happened, I think you probably would have seen the two sides reunite after a while because there wouldn't have been much reason to stay apart. On the other side, you could have gotten the radical Republicans who ended up winning the war and pushing Reconstruction on the South, controlling the whole North indefinitely as this bastion of, oh no, we need to take it back. In which case, you just get disastrous, desultory fighting for generations as each side tries to inflict its will on the other. So I think that's really unpredictable. You know, the South, had it won, and if it had the resources, probably would have kept going with the filibusters in Central and South America, where you have like William Walker took over Nicaragua and actually fought a private war with Cornelius Vanderbilt, which is fascinating. But that happened before the war, and I think that sort of thing would have continued, where it would have been the Confederacy taking over Cuba and running it as a sugar plantation. It and Brazil probably wouldn't have given up slavery because by the 1850s, even they were pretty good at using slavery or using slaves to run mechanized agriculture. They're getting much better at that in Virginia. So slavery would probably still be around in de jure rather than just de facto ways. The whole makeup of Central America would look different. But a lot of it again depends on how the abolitionists reacted to losing the war. I don't know, it's interesting alternate history, but who knows?
Yeah, well, but do you wonder because as power grows and grows, people, governments just find more ways to capitalize it, right, and squeeze on individuals. So do you think, you wonder if we would have ended up in the same place regardless, or maybe it would have slowed it down because wasn't the whole idea in simple terms? This is my ignorance right here, Will. So if I get another comment, make sure you do a 5 star. But wasn't the whole kind of the generalization of it was the South was breaking away from the North because the North was considered the government, the machine, and the South was considered more the militia?
That's one of the conventional explanations. The one I find more convincing is that if you look at say Nat Turner's rebellion, which I think happened in the 1830s. It was this attempt at a slave insurrection in Virginia, and it was really pushed by the Northern abolition press, like William Lloyd Garrison's The Liberator. And that state of things continued for decades, where you had the South saying, I mean, we want to keep slavery because it's our economic basis. So, of course, we're going to continue fighting for this. And then a lot of the North didn't really care. Like the merchants in New York were largely British and Dutch mix in background, and they profited hugely off slavery and just shipping the cotton to Britain. So they got along well with the Southerners and didn't really care. It was similar in Philadelphia. It was really this core group of Puritans in Massachusetts that continued pushing the sentiment. And what that did is it convinced the South that Haiti was going to be replicated in the southern states. And if you know about the Haitian Revolution, it was just a white genocide, like later happened in a lot of Africa during decolonization. And they didn't want to go through that. So eventually they just decided they had to fight it out and try and break away so that that group that was pushing this abolition, slave rebellion propaganda into the South could be screened out more effectively because it was getting harder to do so with the mass press in the 1850s and 60s. And I think that is largely what happened, where just the sides couldn't reconcile. I mean, what are you supposed to do when the other side wants to destroy you? And both sides thought the other side wanted to destroy them and had relatively good reasons for thinking that. And the unpredictable thing, I think, is seeing how that plays out. Like the American Revolution. Had we lost, you'd probably have a much less progressive regulatory world today because the sort of liberal, at the time Whiggish, but now liberal sentiment that was nascent in Britain during the period wouldn't have had a big victory over the Tory side, which was much more focused on hierarchy and order and stability and tradition. And, that sort of change to the outlook, the political outlook of the people would have been significant in pushing back this tide of liberalism that then later turned into progressivism. And so much happened in the interim, who knows where we'd be now. But yeah, I think that's less clear with the American situation because the ideological struggle could go either way, and it's really hard to tell. So anyway, long answer. I know that was rambling, but I hope that's interesting.
Well, and wasn't slavery set to end anyway, though, because of the industrialization? And when it did end, I mean, how many slaves died because they had nothing to eat and nowhere to work? Wasn't there a transitionary period at that point too?
Yeah, the machinery line is brought up a lot. That's one of the conventional explanations. That's what they thought was going to happen in like the 1840s because Virginia, which had been this bastion of wealth and stability in America, like all the first presidents were Virginians except for Adams. It was really struggling over the 1830s to 40s because the soil was worn out from tobacco and they hadn't really succeeded in growing grain at scale with slavery yet. However, by 1850, a lot of that had changed, where Virginia was actually quite prosperous again, at least amongst the planters who were good at managing their slave workforces and getting them to use machinery. Like Robert E. Lee's father-in-law was somewhat feckless and went into debt because he just spent a lot of money. But his plantation was well managed and was growing grain with machinery used by slaves successfully into the late 1850s. And I think we probably would have gotten that. Brazil had slavery into the mid 1890s, and it worked out well enough with the logging and plantation operations they had there. So I don't think so. But like the thing there is, the line from the liberals at the time was that slavery is awful and abominable, which, perhaps, but at the same time, they're running these like industrial slave operations in the factories of northern England and northern America, where if you're making starvation wages and you'll be killed by the company police if you don't show up to work, is that really all that different from agricultural slavery? Not really. I mean, unlike today, where Foxconn has to put suicide nets around the facilities in which they make iPhones, suicide wasn't a big problem in the antebellum South. Most people today rely on slavery to get their cobalt out of the Congo and their iPhones out of China and T-shirts out of China and shoes out of Southeast Asia. So I think slavery still would have stuck around. It just might have changed names somewhat or looked a little bit different.
Well, we have slavery today. I mean, our tax
Yeah,
system
exactly.
is slavery.
Yeah, the like the, the species of person that tweets on their iPhone while wearing Nikes about how they hate slavery. It's just such a cretin because they're using the outputs of slavery and profit via it. They just want to be detached from it. It gets me so annoyed.
Well, but also, I mean, like the reality of it is, we're all slaves to the tax system, and I mean, you have to think that's what the intention of it was because nobody understands it. The
Yeah.
richest people in the world that hire, the best accountants money can buy, they don't even know what they're signing.
Oh yeah, and it's been that way from the beginning. I mean, the tax code has grown tremendously, but I was just reading a biography of Andrew Mellon, who was a Treasury Secretary, and he had to deal with making the tax system work, trying to slim it down after World War One. And he got sued by the government later, and he said, I was running the tax system, and I'm hugely wealthy, where I have the best lawyers on the planet trying to prepare my tax returns, and I still have no idea whatsoever if they're correct. This system just is inoperable. But to get to your point, that was always the reason for it. Like before 1913 or whenever the income tax amendment was passed in America, the government was run entirely off tariffs, and that worked quite well. It doesn't require these invasions of privacy and this constant lawfare to maintain, like the present tax system. You just tax the cargo of a ship when it shows up in your port and have a coastal navy that can combat smuggling, and it's not a big deal, and it can fund the government. But then they implemented the income tax system and the death tax system and the capital gains tax system to provide the means by which the bureaucracy could go after people who try and stand up to it, because it invades your privacy, which it's like you said, it's like slavery where they're just hunting around your quarters trying to look for something to get you with, if they want to punish you. And it's really frustrating, and that's always the point of it. It's to maintain this bureaucracy that then can continually crush the sorts of people who would stand up to the race communist progressive regime. And that's the point. That's why Britain implemented it, to crush the aristocracy. It's why they implemented it in America, to crush kind of the old bastions of power in America. It is what it is, and it's quite bad. So it'd be great if we could get out of it, but you can't fund a welfare system with tariffs. So we have to
Well,
choose.
well, and when I saw big people with big audiences on X, and they were saying, especially after that Minneapolis fraud came out, and they're like, I'm not paying my taxes anymore, and and look at it. I mean, we all have had those thoughts, right? But the
Yeah.
reality of it is, especially being a public figure like you are, like I am, of a lesser degree, you can't not file your taxes
Yeah.
because then you're just giving people an excuse. Then they can just pick you right off.
Yeah, there's not going to be a tax revolt so long as people are atomized, and yeah, I always pay my taxes in full, as well as I'm able, or after doing as much research to make sure I'm doing it as correctly as possible and hiring very good accountants to make sure it's correct. I always pay my taxes in full because you have to. It'll just crush you if you don't, and they'll use it as a means by which to destroy you. Which, you remember, that's like what the Obama IRS was doing without even having the nominal cause of someone not paying their taxes. They just go in and destroy things and destroy lives to try and screen off political opponents of the regime. So yeah, people are posting on Twitter about not paying their taxes. They're very dumb and probably are paying their taxes.
When you heard Trump's talking about doing away with federal income tax, were you just kind of like, why even say this? It's not going to happen.
I think he would like to. He's quite a fan. Like the things that are coherent and consistent about Trump, one of the few, besides being generally opposed to illegal immigration, is him being a fan of McKinley. And the McKinley era was dominated by using tariffs to make America functional again. Because there had been a lot of, labor capital unrest in the years before McKinley. There'd been a lot of fighting. The country was not going in a good direction. Trade was not going in a good direction. And McKinley used the tariff and negotiations about it to stave that off. And labor capital relations got a lot better. The economy improved a great deal in the 1890s and early 1900s. So I think Trump would like to do that. And probably was thinking in an offhanded way, oh, well, maybe we could get rid of the income tax if trade is booming so much that tariffs are big. And were we just funding the military and the interest on the debt again? That probably would be possible. But the problem is we're not. And you're not going to support Social Security, Medicare, Medicaid, quality leering centers with tariff dollars. So I think he's not going to get rid of Social Security. So we're going to still have an income tax, unfortunately. But when he said that, I think he was thinking about McKinley, was my point.
So, what we've talked about over the last, 45 minutes now, do you think at this point this government or these institutions can be, or how do you feel about them? Can they be salvaged, in your opinion?
It depends on the institution. I don't think Harvard will ever be what it was. But like that's another thing that's just a consequence much more of the social system and social fabric changing tremendously than of like anything we can do. Like if you look at F. Scott Fitzgerald, he's always talking about Yale and Harvard and Princeton in his early books, which are about like the late Gilded Age, early post-war era. And that's because all the rich people went to those places and it was quite nice. And then so of course it looked like the people who went to Princeton were hyper wealthy because they either made really good connections there or they were wealthy going into it. And same with Harvard. That's not really the case anymore. The whole meritocracy thing has more or less dismantled most of that regime. So Harvard is never going to be what it was. It's just declining because it can't maintain this very exclusive social atmosphere that used to exist in the whole system of wealth accumulation that maintained it, which was also buttressed by low taxation. So Harvard's declining and has been for a very long time. I think it's hastened its demise by doubling down on just the like worst sort of anti-white racial policies. I think some of the other institutions, a lot of it's just that things are somewhat dismal and have been for years, and that fixing that would do a lot to restore public confidence. Like, I don't know, when you go to the airport and you're just surrounded by like slovenly foreigners in their pajamas and they're all talking on speakerphones in public, it's very hard to be excited about America. Like in those moments, it's just like, what are we doing here, guys? Why am I standing next to some like knockoff of Kung Fu Panda as this obese like Gambian screams into his cell phone in public? What's the point of this? But so like
With their pillow around their neck, like
yeah,
wait.
yeah. It's like the Cookie Monster pajama pants, the like sweatshirt with the holes in it.
What do they call those
The
things? What do they call those pillows that you wear around your neck?
oh, the travel pillows.
Yeah, they're wearing it
Yeah.
in the line. They already got it around their neck.
I just can't travel now because in addition to what we talked about earlier, going to an airport puts me in such a bad mood for like weeks.
So gross.
The It's terrible. But so, stuff like that is very bleak. But that could be solved by just making those people leave. And they're trying to make a lot of those people leave. So I don't know. We'll see how it plays out. The current immigration operation, I mean, people say it's not enough, which to some extent is true. There are like 40 million illegals here. They need to go home. And, a lot of other related immigrant groups. But on the other hand, up until now, the largest actual deportation effort was Eisenhower's Operation Wetback, where if you look at the numbers there, in the space of a year, they deported, like physically deported, I think around like 250 or 300,000 illegals. And then the remainder of the million, that's the highlight of that, were just forced out by self-deportation, where they kind of like made them leave. And this past year, I think it was around 600,000 total were deported by ICE and Border Patrol combined, which is why you saw those 300,000 numbers floating around. That was each agency separately. And of course, that was used by the Doomer propaganda to say that nothing had been done. And the same ratio-ish of the Eisenhower era of self-deportations to actual deportations seems to have occurred. And it's much larger overall. It was 2.5 million, which is a lot of people. So I think like you've said so many times, this isn't a superhero movie. None of these fixes are going to be immediate. They're not going to send like tanks and armored personnel carriers to like force Jacob Frey to do some vague thing. And, Trump certainly isn't going to implement whatever half-cocked policy some random person on Twitter is demanding he do, or it's all over. And that's just the way things are. And I am. I think the administration is doing what it can in many of these ways to try and fix some of the more just open and blatant and awful problems like illegal immigration. And to some extent, they're succeeding. To some extent, they're not. Sorry, that's not really like a straight answer to your question, but I think a lot of it's just we have to wait and see how long these efforts can be maintained and if they can be scaled up.
Well, and in regards to that, and this is what I've mentioned a few times. Carl Denninger brought this up. I mean, to me, I never thought they were really interested in mass deportation because there had to be an easier way. There has to be an easier way to do this without these theatrics of troops or ICE, not troops. Or maybe was it the same? ICE and troops?
ICE is part of DHS.
Right. So
Is it in
not
both?
military, but
Yeah.
because why not go after the employers and
Ah,
the landlords? And this is what I said. I've said this a few times lately because, like, for example, I live in Phoenix. There's so much construction going on here right now. They don't want that to stop.
Well, they probably don't want it to stop, but they have tried going after the employers. The problem is that the current law, as passed by the Reagan administration, which was a disaster, created this thing called the Form I-9, where if they submit to the government this form, the I-9 form, where the like person claims to have a social security number or whatever, and says their name is Jesus Lopez, and here's their social, and if they submit that form to the government, which all of the employers pretty much always do, that's effective legal immunity for the employer. So in a lot of these cases, like there have been a couple taco shops and stuff that have been put out of business by the raids and the employers have been gone after. But if the person or if the employer is at all able and willing to cover their tracks, they have immunity that makes it very difficult for the government to go after them. And Congress would have to change that law or Trump ignore it, which he's not going to do. So Congress would have to change it and get rid of the I-9 form and pass National E-Verify instead and start cracking down on the illegal social security numbers thing, which again, Congress refuses to do it because it's full of the worst people imaginable. And so the alternative to that is really just the ICE raids and trying to force people out and trying to encourage self-deportation by cutting off welfare and Section 8 stuff as they have been doing. Um, so like I think it's very easy to blame them and say, well, like, why aren't you just targeting all these like Mexican food shops in Miami that are obviously employing illegals or these construction sites that are obviously doing the same? And I wish it were possible for them to do so and think it should be possible. And it's an abomination that Reagan passed this terrible law in, I think, 87. But it's the law as it stands, and there's not many ways around it regarding the immunity these employers have just by submitting the stupid form, which the administration could and should do a better job highlighting. But that's the reason that hasn't happened is they tried to go after the employers, particularly in California, if you remember that whole situation in the spring, and were effectively blocked by the law as it stands.
What were you were writing in your Substack, which I encourage people to follow and subscribe to what the work Will is doing. But you were talking about the marijuana law. What was that?
Yeah. Yeah. So this was my idea for trimming the electorate somewhat, where if you look at like a lot of the states that are swing states and have huge problems because there's like no effective government there, the election's very close. Like typically, it's a few tens of thousands of votes either way that swing it. Uh, so if you're looking at saying, well, we want to either open up our lead or use the law as it stands to establish more of a lead, and then use that as a way to start passing much more reactionary legislation that deals with more of these problems, the way as it stands that you could legally, Supreme Court has essentially said it's fine so long as you don't admit what you're doing. Um, you can use drug laws to then convict people of felonies, or better yet, get them to admit to a felony plea deal where they don't really serve jail time, but admit that it's a felony, and then disenfranchise them. Because in all of America and in most states, still there's felony disenfranchisement, where if you commit a felony, no matter what it is, you're forbidden from voting. And a lot of states have kind of changed that, where if you get like the government to say you or the governor to agree to your petition, or if you pay off the costs associated with your having gone through court and having spent a bunch of time in prison, then you can get your voting rights back. But the felony disenfranchisement law stands, and it's been affirmed by the Supreme Court multiple times. You can't really use it for misdemeanors, but you can for felonies. So a lot of states could use the contamination of marijuana with fentanyl, where it's traces amounts of fentanyl in marijuana, or the fact that typically if you have more than like an ounce or two of marijuana, under a lot of state law, that's considered intent to distribute, which is a felony instead of a misdemeanor. And there are similar like little tweaks that you could make or just interpret them differently, where then all of a sudden there are a lot of felonies, and you could use that to start disenfranchising the people that are causing a lot of problems and use it to then say, well, everyone in this apartment, Section 8 apartment block has, been caught committing a felony. So the NGOs that are going there and trying to harvest ballots or convince people to vote illegally, because, if you've been disenfranchised, it's illegal for you to vote. Uh, that's an excellent way of giving a legal avenue to go after these ballot harvesting NGOs and the other NGOs involved in these leftist networks and start really cracking down on the system and shaping up the American electorate somewhat, which people, of course, are always horrified by. They hate the idea. But if you look at how the American system was designed, all of the founding fathers were unanimous in wanting America to be a republic rather than a democracy. And one of the key restraints on the system was that it was at the time really only like white landowning males who voted, though kind of became just landowning people generally or propertied people generally. Rhodesia had a very similar system that worked quite well because you can't have the underclass voting to skin the productive people and then give all the wealth to them. That doesn't work. That's what we've had for a couple decades now, and it's an utter disaster. But you're also not going to get people who are profiting from that system to say, yeah, I'm fine giving up my vote. I don't care. Get rid of my welfare programs. So if you're looking at a way to deal with that, the only real path towards it, I think, is using felony disenfranchisement to shift to the electorate, which then has the added benefit beyond what I just described of creating a situation where candidates who are actually on the right have more of a situation to thrive instead of just allowing the kind of center of the road, never fix anything types to continue winning on the basis of, oh, well, if you don't vote for me, then, Patrice Lumumba over here is going to vote to cut your head off. Um, so it's uncomfortable to bring up, and you can't really admit what you're doing, or else it's illegal, is a law, or it's unconstitutional as a law. But I think that would be the way to fix these problems, or start fixing some of them.
Yeah, it's like the whole idea when whoever brought it, was it Anna Luna, did do away with insider trading within Congress. I'm like, this is stupid. Why would you even waste your time? Like that'll ever get passed.
Yeah. Yeah, I guess the benefit is that then there's all these congressmen voting to let themselves insider trade, which is kind of funny in a depressing sort of way. But it's a total waste of time. It's like the stupid thing in the Senate they just brought up where it's like, oh, well, we're gonna do away with, I think, the 17th Amendment so that instead of direct election of senators, it's like the state government's choosing. That's never gonna get passed. It's just this total waste of time where they should be doing something productive. But Congress hasn't done anything productive in generations. So I guess it's better they're focusing on some fantasy of nonsense than like actively voting on something that's only going to be harmful, I guess. But Congress is the most depressing part of America because they're all just losers.
They don't do anything, and this is where I would get slack both on the right, especially in this particular example on the right, because all these politicians, all they want to do is go to Mar-a-Lago. Like that's all they want to do. Like, and they don't want to. And the journalists, the media, I mean, they're to me a lot of them they're very irresponsible too because they don't want to lose their access to Mar-a-Lago. I mean, they had the Independent Media Awards at Mar-a-Lago. How is that not a conflict of interest?
Yeah, it is.
Right?
It is what it is. I think I don't know. I care less about the media stuff because, like, mass media in America grew out of Jackson wanting to have his own media apparatus and, like, paying someone to do it. Jefferson actually used, I think, State Department funds to get a popular press up to start attacking Washington. It's not good, but it's kind of like that's the only way you sell newspapers is by being like Jefferson and calling John Adams a hermaphrodite. So he probably wasn't, but it's for Trump to have his own semi-loyal group of media people to, be the opposite of the New York Times isn't ideal, but it's entertaining and it's probably the best I think we can hope for in terms of not just constantly listening to like Lindsey Graham and yeah, I was trying to think of the name of the CNN person. I can't name a single one of their hosts
Jake Tapper.
Oh, yeah, okay, yeah.
Yeah.
Like, seeing like Tapper and Graham debate the fine points of, why we should invade Iran is a total waste of time. So at least there's not an independent media now, but I guess there's something of a counterweight, which is better than not.
God, what was yesterday was all over my feed was I'm blanking out the journalist's name because he had a relationship outside of his marriage with. Did you see all that? It
Uh,
was all over X yesterday. I can't think of his name off the top of my
I
head.
saw Milo tweeting about it.
Yeah,
I
yeah.
forget the name of the people involved.
I can't think of the guy's name. Because he went to Puerto, didn't he flee to Puerto Rico or something? He lived in
Oh, I don't know.
Miami. He lived in Miami because he was always complaining his car
Yeah.
was getting broken into. He was writing for the Gateway Pundit, and he might still be. Not Drew Hernandez. Oh, either way. But that was all over my feed yesterday. And then
Yeah.
Sarah Stock was the girl,
Yeah.
and then everybody was commenting on that. And you're seeing all this engagement, and I mean, I'll admit I didn't write. I'm not going to comment, but like watching it, it was like, okay, this is entertaining for an hour.
Oh, it was the one that started where someone posted his screenshots and was like, "Oh, I'm worried he killed his wife and family." And it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh,
What
what
was
the
his name?
hell?"
What
Schaefer? Elijah
Elijah
Schaefer?
Schaefer. Elijah Schaefer. Yeah.
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 That's yeah. Yeah. That's another thing. This is kind of separate from the point you were making, but I was talking to a friend about this. It's really hard to like care that much about what happens with the various or to get invested in the various influencers on X or Rumble or YouTube, all the platforms now, because so many of them are just like unstable, disreputable personalities. Where you can't get attached to these people because they're going to screw you over at some point, and they're all just obsessed with their own little fiefdom, and that's why they push the delusional claims about like the Egyptian spy planes killing Charlie Kirk or whatever was he shocked by like an electric microphone, all the stupid stuff. It's just because they want clicks. They're disreputable. You shouldn't I just try and whenever I see someone do something, I just mute them now, so my feed is mainly about history and stuff, and I just don't see these people anymore because so many of them are awful.
You're better than I am, man. I mean, some of the drama yesterday. I mean, Milo, I do find him
Oh, I saw
entertaining.
that. It was I kept up with it because it was a lot, but I
He
try to
is the
avoid it.
godfather of trolling, man. That guy.
Yeah. The I guess he used to work for Breitbart, right?
I think
Like back in the
so.
day.
That was before I was following any of this. But I will say he did a post. It was probably 2 years ago, and he just put a picture of Natalie Winters up, and Natalie Winters is young,
Hmm.
beautiful, whatever,
Hmm.
and he goes, "What a beautiful morning," and puts this picture up of her, and she responds. She says like red exclamation points or something. And then he does a video of him and his two buddies in the car, and they're like, "She's my everything. She's my diva. That's my diva. That's my diva." And she just comments tags, "I find retards." To him. I mean, that guy knows. He knows how to get people fired up, man.
Yeah. It's also someone else pointed out like he's now burned so many like various like right-wing celebrities. Like why do these people continue letting him into their circles and like texting him with all their like deepest darkest details? It's crazy, but apparently they do. Again, it's just unstable people.
But it also makes you wonder too if it's this whole pro wrestling thing, like wink, wink. Hey, well, this will help both of us. All this drama,
Oh, I'm sure there's a lot of that. Definitely.
more buy me a coffees, more subscriptions, more,
Yeah.
because that stuff works, man. I mean, I remember I've always been a fight fan, and I don't know. I probably didn't even tell you the story. I don't know anybody I've even shared this on here before, but we used to go down to L.A. down to Wildcard Boxing Gym and watch Manny Pacquiao train back in 2010, 2011 when he was like,
Hmm.
if you know who that is, he was like the height of the.
Vaguely.
Yeah, he was out of the Philippines and
Uh,
was huge in the Philippines, but huge international fighter. And they always wanted him to fight Mayweather. And long story short, these HBO guys, because they would do these docu-series on these fights, and I was talking to these guys, and they were talking about Mayweather, and I said, "Is he cool?" And they're like, "Oh, he's a great guy." I'm like, "Really?" Because you think he's such a dick the way he's on
mhm.
TV. He goes, "Oh no, he got a lot of these things that he does. He's taken from like one of those pro wrestling." And I mean, the guy Mayweather, he was a marketing genius because he was boring to watch the actual fight, but people loved him or they hated him, but they paid to watch. So it makes me wonder with these media heads. It's like some of this is like if you think it's like you wonder if it's backdoor deals to you know
Oh, there's a lot of that. Like there was one, it might have been 2 years ago now, where it was some girl who like does the noodling thing with catfish where you like, have you seen that where you like stick your hand in the catfish hole and try and pull it out by the gills? You know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, well,
Yeah.
the one girl, her name's Hannah Barron, but she's like a
Yeah.
legit. Oh, is it her?
Yeah, but you remember, so she was coming back, or she was like creating a Twitter account or something, and they were boosting it. So they got some like weird looking Iranian woman or Persian woman to be like, "Oh, she's so ugly. I can't believe men find this attractive." So then, like, you have all the like just millions of like male accounts being like, "No, I think she's beautiful." Like, what are you talking about? And it was obviously just a marketing campaign. You get a lot of that. I think some of these people though are just insane, and so they like periodically have their breakdowns on the timeline, which is sad. But a lot of it's marketing, for sure.
I remember that. So that was, oh, that's interesting. That was a bar, which was brilliant because
I
it,
don't. I'm not on the
yeah,
inside.
yeah,
Just
yeah.
my
But your
impression
guess
is,
on it, yeah.
yeah,
Well,
yeah.
because it was the opinion that she didn't dress up like a woman. She didn't have the feminine look to her.
Yeah, and
And
then it
she,
was some picture of her like in a very like small bikini, and it's like, how could men find this attractive?
yeah,
It's
yeah.
like, oh yeah, yeah.
I got to ask you as we're talking about this. Do you have any opinion on this Epstein stuff?
I was hoping they would just arrest everyone on like day one, which they didn't do because it's not a superhero movie. Yeah. But like
We
it's
got to get
another thing where
merch.
they,
Well, we got to get. I'm telling you, somebody did. One of my Substack subscribers did put a "This is a superhero" on a coffee mug, but I feel like I need to trademark that and get that logo onto a mug because it's so
yes.
true.
Yes. Yeah, you should sell that. That'd be a bestseller. Yeah. But on the other hand, they did release like however many million documents the other day. I think it was like 3.5 million, which they probably hid some things, but it's still a lot. And it's a reasonable amount of openness into what was going on, which was insider trading and a bunch of horrible people being involved with that.
Peter
So,
Attia, Peter
pardon?
Attia, Peter Attia was part of that.
Yeah, when his son was being born or dying or something, right? I think
Oh,
if
I didn't know
like
that.
I think the timeline of the email, if I remember right, because I'm not really into his whole thing, but some people I know are, and they're sending it to me. And from what I remember, his son was like dying in the hospital, and he's like, "No, I need, I need to do something." And then like the timeline matches up where he was hanging out with Epstein in New York. Yeah, and then you saw the thing with Bill Gates. It's just awful. And then I think Epstein had mentioned being connected to the Rothschild, so there's that, and there's emails with Ehud Barak, and I don't know. So many people were caught up in it. It's just terrible. But I also don't know, like, a lot of people were using it to push the idea that the whole Trump administration is just enthralled to these, satanic pedophiles and demons. I don't think that's true, and I think some of the slowness in releasing these was because they had to edit them for legal reasons to black out the victim names, which when it's 4 million documents, 3.5 million documents, does take a while. Apparently, it was most of the Southern District of New York. That sounds right. That was doing it, which who knows? So I don't really know what to think about it, and I've tried not to get super caught up in it because that's just another rabbit hole that people go down. I used to be more into it than I am now.
Yeah, I was just curious what your thoughts were on it. I mean, I've come to the generalization of like, okay, first Pam Bondi said they were on her desk. Then you had the people with the white binders, and you look at those people that were in that photo op, and where are they at now? It's like
Yeah,
they're following the same kind of.
yeah,
And look at, I mean, if I'd have been there, I probably would open up the white binder too. I mean, I wouldn't have known any better. Uh, but I mean, I would hope maybe I would have been smart enough, but to look into the binder before I took a photo op.
yeah,
Uh, but then, Trump to say it's a hoax, and that we should move on from it. And now they're releasing. I mean, I just don't think this is being done on accident. But the other thing is though, let's say they unloaded everything today. No, I don't know if the people would
no,
believe it
believe it.
anyway. Yeah, they
No,
wouldn't. You wouldn't believe it
no.
anyway.
Yeah, it's just I think another thing is people take everything Trump says extremely seriously. Like he's not just, being himself. And he's done this since 2015, where he'll just say a bunch of stuff and some of it's true and some of it's not. A lot of it's stuff he shouldn't have said. I haven't seen any convincing evidence that he was doing anything illegal with Epstein. And from most accounts, he kicked him out of the club at Mar-a-Lago once Epstein had been caught doing something bad near him the early 2000s. So I don't know. I don't think Trump is being blackmailed by these people. I think he probably just didn't want to deal with it and didn't want it to turn into the debacle it's become. But because he didn't want it to do that, it, monkey's paw curls, and it became that, which hasn't been great. So we'll see. It's weird that people haven't been arrested, which I think is the one big critique that they should have been. So yeah, so I know that's not a satisfactory answer. It's just hard
No,
to tell, and I don't,
no, it is
it's
what
one
it
of those
is.
things. So many people have tried to like make it into something I think it's not. Not in terms of Epstein not being a bad guy. He certainly was and was awful, and all the people who were on his island are awful. But I think the release of the documents has unnecessarily been a debacle, but has also been blown out of proportion by people who just want clicks and attention.
Yeah, that's the one thing I will say about Trump. I mean, what will the world be like in 3 years when he's not in office? And he's not going to run in 28. This whole
No.
notion that's another one of those things that's that's on the left though. People think that he's gonna.
Yeah, with those stupid hats, he has them convinced that he's going to do it, which he's not.
He's the ultimate troll too. I don't know if he knows.
He's so good at it.
He's so good at it. He is so good at getting people fired up. I mean, there'll never be another one like him after this.
No, no. He has like just the right blend of like delivery and knowing what to say. He when he was on Twitter, he was better at it than he is now, but he's still pretty good.
Well, he's getting a little older, so he's like an aging
Hmm.
athlete, slowing down a little bit. But even the year of the election, I mean, well, it just wasn't him, but the memes. I mean, the stuff. It was some of it was just brilliant. I mean, Peanut. Who would ever thought that
Yes.
Peanut the squirrel would and what was it, Fred the raccoon? I think they both died tragically that
Yeah,
day.
yeah. I remember Peanut. Yeah.
I think,
mean,
I
there
think
was
Fred the
line from
raccoon
the
died
debate, they're
too.
eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the pets in Ohio. They turned that into a song like immediately.
I have admittedly have gone back and watched that clip because and I said to Dave Collum because we recorded right after that I said no one's going to remember anything about that debate except for that soundbite is all that they're going to remember. Well, I'm not kidding you. I must have watched that probably 10 times that clip and dying laughing. It was hilarious.
What I'd forgotten is that AI art was just like starting to become a thing around that time. So you instantly had the pictures of Trump running with like the cats under his arms as a bunch of Haitians chased him. It was before they nerfed the programs. It was so good. And I was trying to look it up to reference something the other day and was just like laughing hysterically at these pictures that were popping up. Yeah, so good.
What about when he worked at McDonald's and he was handing the French fries to the drive-through,
Awesome.
and then after he wins, there's the meme of him going through drive-through and Kamala's hand is working the drive-through and handing him the fries.
Yeah. So good.
So
That and the garbage truck thing where he's like wearing his shirts with the French cuffs and then like the apron or the vest. Yeah, he's so good.
no,
He's like joking on stage about how it shows off his figure and makes his waist look smaller, so he decided to wear it. Yeah. It's all just I think sometimes people take it too seriously. It's like, yeah, it's a political rally with 100,000 people. He's not going to be talking about, he's not going to do the Putin and Tucker thing where he goes back to 972 to describe present history. It's gonna be a joke with the garbage truck and some McDonald's, but you just have to laugh when it comes. You can't be too serious about it.
I can't wait for the UFC a fight at the
Oh,
White House lawn.
it's our first gladiator match. Maybe he'll do the thing with the thumb if one of them gets knocked out.
I people. I mean, this is where the country's at right now. Like, we're literally gonna have a fight on the White House lawn. I can't wait. I can't wait to
Yeah.
watch it.
Yeah, that's another thing where besides McKinley, his favorite president is Jackson, which it'd be great to see him do the Jackson, just ignore the courts thing. But in the interim, Jackson's inauguration party was characterized by everyone showing up and getting really drunk and destroying the White House. A big plebeian crowd. So we'll probably see that again. Hopefully they don't actually destroy it this time and just mess up the grass, but it'll be extremely entertaining and very Jacksonian.
You'll watch
We
it.
just Oh, for sure, I'll watch it. It'll be awesome. Yeah, I was interning in DC. I interned as a tobacco lobbyist for a summer, which was a lot of fun. But while I was there, it was when he did the big fireworks thing, if you remember that, where like he had the B-2 bomber fly over and they did all the fireworks and there's a big rally with tanks, like by the Lincoln Memorial. It was a lot of fun. It was awesome. It brings out all the like insane people where you have the protesters and the Q people just like screaming at each other on the yard in DC. It's a ton of fun. Yeah, hopefully I'll be in DC for it this year. Or I guess it's this year. Is it this summer that he's doing that? Or is
June. They said June.
yeah. It'll be hot. That'll be fun.
Yeah, well, you'll never see this again. This will be the
No.
only time this will ever happen.
Yeah. No one has it in them. Like, I think JD Vance catches a lot of flack, but I think he's pretty good. He'll probably, I hope he gets elected. I think has it in him, but he doesn't have like this sort of showmanship in him. Just no one does, either on the Democrat side or the Republican side. Yeah, it's something special and extremely entertaining. It takes a level of cleverness that just so many people don't have.
And he thrives on it too. He
Oh
thrives
yeah,
on the people getting so worked up over him.
yeah.
I've never seen it like that before. I mean, he is the most resilient guy, whether you like him or hate him. And I've said this to people that hate him. He is the most resilient son of a bitch I've ever seen. Like he just doesn't
Mhm.
give up.
No, yeah, no. I like he catches so much flack, which, some of it's deserved. I wish we hadn't bombed Iran, but, whatever. On the other hand, how many people who claim to be better than him would continue running after being arrested and shot in the head? Very few. Most don't even do anything now. They, use a VPN and post from an anonymous account to, post very milquetoast takes. They're not willing to sacrifice anything or give up anything, which he has. He hasn't done everything I'd like to do, but he has spent his probably last few years on Earth doing this and trying to do something, which I think is admirable. And he's hilarious. He's managed to keep it up. He hasn't just fallen into the pit of despondency that so many people have. He has a lot of virtues that are often forgotten, particularly in the kind of uh, cacophony of despair that composes a lot of the critiques from the right on Twitter. But it's fun to watch.
Do you have any concerns with JD Vance in relation to his connections or appearance of ties to Peter Thiel and the whole Tech Brothers?
Not really. I don't. The only concern I would have there is the tech people's love of H-1B visas, and I don't think Vance has that love of H-1B types, so I'm not concerned about that. I think Teal has been pretty anti the things I'm against. I know he's gay, which I'm not gay, but like if you read his book about diversity from the 90s, he was one of the few people willing to say that at the time. It did take an amount of bravery and ability to write and articulate his ideas well that a lot of people don't have. And he's been pretty consistent on that sense. He's another person who I think suffered a good bit for having supported Trump the first time around. And I don't know what he's done since, but because I haven't kept up with him as much. But I don't think he's the antichrist that a lot of people say when they want clicks. He's probably somewhat odd and probably has vices that I don't know much about, but I also don't think like he's certainly not as bad as the Podestas. So I try not to get caught up in that. I don't think it matters that much, and I don't think that worrying about it will go anywhere productive.
Well, it's the whole idea of the surveillance state too. Is like, and this is I've even taken a step back to look at this and be like, first of all, we've been moving towards a surveillance state for a very long time. This is not something that's been weeks in the making, and
Mhm.
we have become more authoritarian. I mean, you're kidding yourself if you don't think these traffic cameras or the
Yeah.
ring
Oh yeah.
cameras at your house, if they want to access that, they're going to do it.
Oh, absolutely.
Salesforce, these EMRs, EHRs for healthcare, all of it's data mining.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I just like, are you going to be able to avoid that? Probably not, unless you like live in the woods and grow your own grain and occasionally shoot bears or something. The idea, like the alternative, is so ridiculous. I don't see the point in worrying because it's either someone like him who's going to control it, who might be odd and have problems, but is generally on side, at least in most of the things that matter. Like, Teal's not going to be the one to implement some race communist agenda that taxes us all into oblivion and pours millions of migrants across the border. Palantir has been pretty closely aligned with ICE and done a good job with them. So it's either going to be in his hands or in the enemy's hands. And, I'd prefer it to be the America of like 1850 in a lot of ways, but because it's not going to be that, it's, I don't worry too much about Palantir. I just, it's unideal, but what can you do? Um,
Well, you have to work within the system that you're given as well. And to your
yeah.
point, yeah, you can take this road of when there was an alternative to everything out there. You can get a Freedom phone instead of an iPhone. I'm like, yeah, who's going
Yeah, I
to use
remember the
that?
Freedom Phone.
Who's going to use a Freedom phone? I have an
Yeah.
iPhone. I'm not getting rid of my
Yeah.
iPhone.
Or like, Eric Prince sells the unplugged phone, which probably does what it's purported to do, which is shield most of your data. But it's like the only time I use my iPhone is when I go on Twitter. I don't like or make calls to my friends. But I don't know, like they know everything about me. I've been posting about Rhodesia on Substack. They know my views, and yeah, I don't know. A lot of people worry too much about that when it's both baked into the cake and there's not really, if they have cause for concern, that concern will exist whether or not Google is using cookies to serve them somewhat better ads about t-shirts they'd like to buy. Yeah.
Did you see Turning Point's doing a Super Bowl halftime show this week?
Yeah. I was surprised by some of the names, like Brantley Gilbert, which
I don't know who that is.
I didn't know he's a country rock type person. Yeah. I don't really listen to much music, but I was surprised to see him because I didn't know he was very political. But that'll be another fun spectacle that's total nonsense but entertaining. Kid Rock and some country stars. Yeah. Which the whole point of it, like, I don't. If it's only for halftime, that means people are still watching the Super Bowl, which means they're still supporting the NFL monetarily. And I'm not going to support Bad Bunny, but I'll tune in to pay money through ads to the people who have like end racism and die Whitey in the end zone. I probably won't watch the Super Bowl. I haven't watched it for the last few years, but it's so stupid. It's one of those gimmicks where I don't see what the point is. If you like only watching part of it, they've gotten what they want out of you.
Well, what's it? Nicki Minaj now apparently you're talking speaking of superheroes. Now she's on the other side, right? She's on the good side now. And somebody wrote on my ex yesterday they put the Scott Besson video and tagged me, and that you got to ask one of your guests about this, which I can't even believe I'm bringing up right now. I'm sorry, Will. You saw that video going viral around with Scott Besson and her back to back, and she's rapping some song or something. And
No.
I'm like, oh my God. I'm like, people really think that this is good guys, bad guys, and now she's on the other side of this. But I was surprised that she wasn't on the lineup for this Turning Point thing because she spoke at AmFest.
Yeah. I think Kirk didn't like her, and one of like the last things he said was, "Don't like bring in Nicki Minaj to do something stupid." And then, of course, that's what they did right after they killed him, which is sad. But it's all so tiresome. It's uh, conservative superstar Nicki Minaj and her songs about genitalia. Yeah, it's just what the founders were fighting for.
And we're supposed to embrace this. We're supposed to
Yeah,
embrace this.
it's
Just like the whole
based
trans,
degeneracy.
the conservative trans movement. Like we're supposed to
Yeah.
embrace this.
Yeah. I get much more annoyed by that stuff than Palantir, but I don't. It's all so stupid. The thing is, the alternative is if the other side wants to like kill you, it's hard to worry that much about it. I just find it very depressing that that's where we are.
Well, and really, if you think about it too, if somebody really that important wants you dead, wants you gone from the earth, they're going to do it, and there's nothing you and I
Oh,
can
yeah,
do to stop
yeah.
it.
I mean, that's what happened. People were ragging on Trump for letting ICE defend itself when some leftist was trying to run them over. But Biden sent an FBI kill team to shoot some Trump supporter who couldn't even walk for like posting mean messages about Biden on Facebook. The If you remember that whole incident, it's insane. And I yeah, that was another thing. We were talking earlier about like things that have caused me to just get out of the political podcast space. The sort of people who are like, "Oh, I'm very based. I'm on the right. I love Pinochet and Franco and other dictators, but I would never, ever, ever support ICE or Border Patrol if they shot someone trying to kill them, because I have morals." I found that just so frustrating and stupid. It got me really annoyed. Because the big good thing Trump has been doing is unleashing ICE to try and encourage self-deportations and affect actual deportations. And, there are critiques of the scale at which that's happening, or more of it should be happening. But to be counter-signaling ICE and against Border Patrol, I think is a marker of someone who's not really on side with the project at all and is a political enemy. So I've been very frustrated by the right leaning into third worldism on a lot of that stuff.
Well, and also too is I wrote this on my personal Facebook. Didn't think I'd get as much heat as I did, but I said if you go to any of these things, you're a moron. You're just a moron.
Yes.
Like if you
Yes.
and people are like, well, that's your First Amendment. First Amendment. No, you're asking for trouble. And it already came out with this doctor, like his background, and you saw the video that had come out. He was at another protest, kicking the truck, and
Yeah, I was spitting on them.
did he deserve to die? I don't know, but you go down to this stuff, you're a moron. I don't care who you are.
I got distracted with him where once I realized it was like a male nurse, the Meet the Parents, where it's Gaylord Fokker, the like Jewish male nurse. I just was laughing about that and got kind of distracted from the story itself. And but yeah, it's like yes, if you bring a gun known for just randomly going off to a protest and get in a scuffle with law enforcement, like of course that's going to end poorly. Sure, it's your right to have it, and I support the Second Amendment, but you're an idiot. Of course, that's like something bad is going to happen. You're not asking for anything good. Yeah,
So where are you focusing your energy at right now?
I've been trying to dig into more history stuff. Yeah, I just started the other day a YouTube channel called The Old World Show where I'm going through colonial figures I find interesting, people like that. I started with James Brooke, who was a British guy who was wounded fighting for the East India Company, who took over part of Borneo called Sarawak and became a like pirate king. He's a pretty cool figure. So I find stuff like that interesting, kind of like educational history stuff that I think imparts a generally rightist worldview on sort of the people who internalize it. So stuff about that with colonialism, economic history, imperial history, American history. I think that's a better thing to be leaning into right now than a lot of the political hysteria.
What we didn't even really get a chance to touch on. You okay on time? You okay for a
Yeah,
few more
yeah, I'm
minutes?
good.
Yeah. We didn't get a chance to even touch on economic history and how that ties into where we're at now and what you see in the future, because that's another one of these things right now where is the dollar about to collapse? Is it? I mean, I had Martin Armstrong on
Hmm.
or 2 days ago now. Or, no, yesterday, 2 days ago, and he was saying this idea of a dollar crashing is utter nonsense. And but then you hear other people that talk about precious metals and gold and silver, and China is only taking transaction in gold from the United States right now. So what are your thoughts on all that? And the Bitcoin. Got to ask you about Bitcoin, which I don't
Uh,
even know what it's doing today. I'm gonna look it up while you're talking.
I think it was down to its lowest point of the Trump presidency today. I generally like gold and Bitcoin as hedges against inflation. I think they'll both continue to appreciate against the dollar over the long term. However that plays out, it's impossible to know the rate at which they'll do so. But like if you're saving for something 10 years from now, gold's probably a better bet than long-term treasuries, or even short-term treasuries. So that's one thing. I don't think a dollar collapse is going to happen. I just don't see why it would. Because that would mean what? Like, is the British pound gonna suck up all the liquidity? China has fake currencies because they don't let money leave the country. So you have the yen and the renminbi, or the yuan and the renminbi. So of course it's not gonna be that. People will probably buy more gold as they have been for a while, but that doesn't mean the end of the dollar because they're also not going to be shipping gold bricks around the world. Like because we originally had to do that with the Arabs, where J.P. Morgan, the company, not the person, was involved in shipping these whole like shiploads of gold sovereigns, which are about quarter ounce gold pieces, to the Arabs to pay for oil, and that was a disaster. So we're not going to do that again. That's the reason the system's been constructed as it is, and why we have aircraft carriers. So I don't think the dollar's going to collapse. I think a lot of people pushing that are pushing it because they make a commission selling gold or selling Bitcoin, and so want you to be worried about the dollar and buy that stuff, which might or might not be a good investment. I think also it's forgotten, but there are huge growth vectors right now. Nuclear energy is finally coming back in a big way, which should have been the case in the 70s and 80s, but wasn't. But it's finally coming back, and nuclear energy would be hugely beneficial for the country and a real stimulus. Similarly, AI might lead to some job losses, but also is, if you use it well, a huge productivity increaser and is expected to be such in a lot of ways. Um, so, I think the debt situation also isn't all bad. The combination of cutting down on fraud, deporting a bunch of people who use a lot of social services, cutting off a lot of the immigration stuff, like H-1Bs are another thing Trump has been just savaged for. But if you read the Times of India, it's been freaking out for a month about essentially no H-1Bs have been granted, and they're just doing bureaucratic stonewalling because Congress won't get rid of the program. So, a lot of those people that were causing job losses for Americans are going away, which will balance out some of the AI stuff. I think there's a lot of reasons to think that economic conditions might be better than people say on Twitter in the years ahead, and that there are reasons to think that the investments in nuclear power, productivity, increasing technology will play out much as the Industrial Revolution did, where there's some, or particularly the second Industrial Revolution, where there's some upheaval, but also a lot of good that comes out of it. Because this is really the continuation of that project in a lot of ways. And the first industrial revolution, people forget this, but Britain, when it ended the Napoleonic Wars, kind of right as the first industrial revolution was really getting going, had like a 250% debt to GDP ratio, huge problems with unemployment because people returning from the war, huge issues with its main economic sector, which was grain production because of the end of the war and trade issues. And yet, the next century was its golden age, essentially. And it's because they invested in these things that enhanced national wealth, rooted in the nation, and enhanced productivity of the people of the nation, whether in agriculture, or in industry, or in trade. So there's no reason to think things have to play out that way, and a lot could be done to derail it, as currently is happening in California with the wealth tax. But there's also reasons to think it will play out well, and I tend towards thinking the latter is happening between reusable rockets and small modular reactors and some pretty AI has finally gotten impressive, like using the new Google Gemini. It's actually quite impressive and a useful tool for research and note taking. So I think some of that stuff is going well, and the dollar isn't dying. It's losing its value with inflation, but it's not dying.
Would you say you're optimistic then in the short term, long term?
Long-term optimistic, certainly. I think if the smartest people in the country, people like Elon Musk, were worried about the way things are headed over the long term, they'd be selling up and moving to New Zealand or Tahiti or somewhere and hoping to wait it out. They're not. They're investing in the next thing, which is Starship and SpaceX's case or the AI centers and stuff. And they're not right about everything. They're right about a lot of things, but that is a huge capital outlay, and it's tying them to America and its future because they're building the infrastructure here. So I think there's reason to be hopeful over the long term. I think we'll have to get over a few hurdles in the short term, particularly the like the leftist insurgency problem that we're seeing play out with ICE, and then the related problem that ICE is trying to solve, which is America's demographic crisis. But th those problems can be fixed, and action is being taken against them, even if it's not everything we'd like to see. So I am optimistic. I just think the next getting through the middle point might be somewhat difficult.
When you say difficult in terms of what do you envision for a difficult time?
I have no idea how the stock market will play out or inflation. That just kind of happens as it happens. I think the big thing will be surviving the neuroticism of the information warfare apparatus. Where we saw this with Renee Good and uh, Gaylord Fokker, whatever his real name
That's
is.
what I was going to say.
uh, but anyway, sorry. We saw this where this played out, where it's okay. Well, we have to deal with the like Somalis who have stolen the national GDP of Somalia from taxpayers in Minnesota. They have to be dealt with, but it's extremely unpleasant dealing with them because there's next to nothing you can do to make America a worse place to be than like Somalia or Equatorial Guinea or Haiti. So you have to actually, like, these people are ones you actually have to arrest and deport, which is by nature a lot more intrusive and unpleasant than just encouraging self-deportation by raiding a few construction sites. So that'll be extremely unpleasant, and that you'll see the propaganda apparatus continue to spin regarding it, where why were so many people ostensibly on the right suddenly posting the same things about why it's unacceptable for ICE to defend itself from leftist agitators? Well, it's probably that they were being paid by people who, don't have the country's best interest at heart. And you saw the same thing with a lot of stuff regarding Venezuela, regarding Muslim immigration to America, regarding H-1Bs, even the people paid to say that like soda on food stamps is a good thing, if you remember that whole crisis. So the information warfare apparatus is going to increasingly be, I think, difficult for people to navigate and increasingly unhealthy for people to navigate because it is just so crazy and so hard to know what to believe, which will impose that difficulty on people, particularly those who engage with it. But and also like the other part is the sort of people who just want to like go along to get along job wise, like just have the like office space style corporate job where you don't really do much and not much is expected of you and you don't make that much money, but you're fine. I think a lot of those jobs are going away because of AI, and you don't need some spreadsheet jockey to make $60,000 a year doing nothing anymore. You can just have pay Gemini $20 a month to do it. And so long term, that'll encourage people to actually do something fulfilling and do something productive that will be, I think, much better for the nation and much better for them. But it will be unpleasant in the short term, as was the agricultural revolution, as were both industrial revolutions. So we'll have to get through that, and it'll be unpleasant. But and then there's the thing we talked about earlier with the whole Civil War that wasn't related to the ICE operations, where there's violence, assassinations, which we're already seeing, guerrilla actions by committed leftist groups, and the fighting back from the federal government, which hopefully will happen this time in a way it didn't in the 70s. So that'll be unpleasant, and a lot of that will be difficult and probably not wonderful to live through. So those are the sort of difficulties I see, but I do think we'll be able to get through them. And the fact that action is being taken that is provoking these counter reactions is, I think, indicative of something good happening. And that if ICE is deporting enough people for the left to be upset in the way it's upset, that means some real change is being made in the demographic situation that is to our benefit over the long term. So I think that's quite good.
Well, and also, we touched on earlier, and I meant to add is, you have the rule of law just being ignored from city and state right now against the federal, and that's where I was going with the whole idea of the Civil War, because, you have they're not complying. I mean, federal law overrides city and state, county, and people are just ignoring it right now.
Yeah, we'll see if that continues. Like the reason thousands of agents were in Minneapolis is because the city and state government weren't going along with it. But that problem has been more or less resolved. Now they are. We'll see if they continue to do so. And it'll take a lot of resources in many of these cases to get them to do it. But I think there's reason to think that that problem is going away as well. And as of this month, they've cut off a lot of funding to sanctuary cities, which has been entertaining. Huge amounts of cuts to various welfare programs related to illegal immigration. So some of that stuff is going well. I try not to use the word hope because, as you said, it's a stupid word. But I think there's reason for optimism in a lot of these cases that the sorts of actions that need to be taken are being taken, even if not to the degree I'd like to see.
Well, and that's the other thing too is, kind of coming back full circle is, in 2020, again, I didn't know any better. I mean, you had the George Floyd riots, which, I like to point out was my birthday, May 30th. So I always remember that day.
Mine's January 6th.
Oh, it is? Oh, wow. Wow. Happy belated.
Yeah, thank you.
But
anyway, I interrupted. Sorry.
No, you're good. But you remember after that, people thought, and again, I've thought the same. I mean, I thought if Trump was going to win the election, and admittingly, I didn't think he was going to win. I thought they would cheat again. But I thought if he would win, I thought we'd see civil unrest all over the country. Well, it didn't happen. Yeah. No King's protests. 1.0. It was a joke. Yeah. No King's protest 2.0. Right?
Did that even happen?
I think it did. I think.
I know it was mentioned. I just never saw any videos. So
I think it did. Yeah. So it shows you how relevant it was, because I'm pretty sure it did. In Minneapolis, this it was escalating, but now I thought, I'm like, well, they got to get a handle on this because it's only going to get warmer there, as we move into the spring and the summer. But that doesn't necessarily mean there's going to be George Floyd riots again this summer. I mean.
Yeah, I mean, they cut off USAID, whatever else Doge did, it did, and America AIDS, which is awesome. And I think that cut off a lot of funding these things. They still have to go after the NGOs. Allegedly, they're doing RICO cases, but we'll see. So they have to go after those. But a lot of the funding that was going to those has been cut, which limits their ability to do things, which is why instead of nationwide riots, it'll be like one state at a time with just the worst people imaginable burning American flags, which doesn't play well. Which is another political thing. Like, it's hard to know what administration inaction is them trying to game it out politically and do the best thing to be able to continue operating into the future, and what is just them either being cowardly or not wanting to do it. But in some ways, not rocking the boat in a huge way with half-cocked ideas about the Insurrection Act or like sending in Apache gunships to, deal with the protesters or whatever is good. It's disappointing to people on Twitter, but it's probably good in that it forces, or it lets the normie not care about it. where if you remember when the riots over Renee Good or something were happening a week ago, like traffic on Google for whatever stupid NFL team was winning that weekend, like the Buffalo Bills or some stupid team that I can't even pretend to know anyone on the named on the team. They, the traffic for that was like 100 times anything related to ICE or Renee Good, and people just were checked out and don't care. So that's probably good that they don't care because if they were forced to care, they'd be posting black squares again, which wouldn't be helpful for us. So I think some of the grinding victories that are being won in places like Minnesota, in Minneapolis, where they exhaust resources and force the other side to overplay its hand and get arrested, like Don Lemon. Uh, it's not huge action, but it is a collection of small wins that collectively could be meaningful, and in any case, are still action being taken without pushing people to the other side, which is a largely useful endeavor.
Well, and I think too, I'm going to quote my friend Chris Zeman, who
Oh, it's sad he passed.
very sad, very sad. You knew him?
I didn't know him. I listened to his podcast for forever. He was. I wish he were still around because he always had a very like statesman-like air. I really enjoyed listening to what he had to say because it was very thoughtful and not just half-cocked nonsense. But sorry, I
No, 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 no. I got tagged on Gab the other day because Chris would always say mute motel on X when he was getting ready to mute somebody. And I've used that, and somebody tagged me and said, you got to bring the mute motel and honor the Z-Man back. And I was running this morning and I was thinking about him, and I never got a chance to meet him in person. Like Pete Canonas, they were friends. They would hang out. They'd meet up a couple times a year, I think. And but he was saying one of our last conversations. He's talking about like the Floyd riots, and he's like, I just think people are tired. They're just tired. Like they don't have the energy for this anymore, like they did in 2020, and that's why you're not seeing that it get the kind of traction that it did back then.
Yeah, I made the 70s comparison earlier. There's a really good book called Days of Rage that's about all that. And one point the author makes at the end is that there was some leftist terror group that was trying to do the whole routine of like blowing up a JP Morgan office to complain about racism or something. And New York was such a shithole by like the end of the 70s that no one cared because it's like, oh, well, one more bombing, who cares? All of Harlem is burned out and infested with crackheads. They none of this things are so bad that none of this matters anymore. And people were exhausted and just wanted it to end. And so they got Reagan, who wasn't great, but did end some of it. We probably have some of that right now where it has been just absolutely exhausting, particularly people who have to be in the workplace and go to these DEI seminars where some obese woman is like screaming at them for being white. It's infuriating and it turns people off. And even if it doesn't turn them into committed reactionaries who are, going to do whatever, it does just make them not want to deal with it and tired of it and not go along with a lot of it, which has, I think, been broadly positive for us and is continuing to be such.
Have you found yourself, last question, in relation to what you're doing, connecting with like-minded people that are doing similar types of work but in a different lane? And for example, like we talked about Jay Burden earlier, I had John Carter on my show. What an excellent writer he is, man.
He's wonderful. I love reading his stuff.
Thank you for the mention, by the way, in your post.
I've been trying to get better about that with like referencing people whose stuff I've been reading and thinking about because there's a lot of Substack doesn't quite do a good job with recommendations. It allows you to recommend people, but typically it only shows like the top two or three, or the most recent two or three things you've recommended, where it's, I think, hard for people to find stuff through that and find authors through that, and it doesn't do notifications well. So I've been trying to actually tag people more because then people check them out. And I think there are a lot of people like that. The people who are quieter on X, still posting and saying things, but more restrained in their emotions and not, constantly doing the Denethor thing and jumping off the mountain. There are a lot more people like that than one might expect, and they're a lot more intelligent than the influencer types, and I get a lot more out of them. So there have been Jay Burden's great. A lot of the people he has on are great. The Carl Dahl guy he had on to talk about the Spanish Civil War does a fabulous job talking about that conflict. There are a lot of people like that. And one guy, he's former Rhodesian, lives in South Africa now, and is a farmer there. And he was a bounty hunter in Zambia for a while. His name's Rory Duncan. He's just a fascinating guy. He's not, super political in American politics, but he's a fascinating guy, really fun to talk to, really bright, super cheerful and positive, and despite living in South Africa after having his multiple countries in which he lived destroyed by decolonization. So I think there's a lot we can learn from people like that, and I really enjoy talking to them and learning from them.
Is he on X and Substack and all that?
He's not on Substack. He's just on X. But
Does he,
I'll shoot you over his handle. He's a fun guy.
does he do conversations
Mhm.
and stuff?
Yeah, I've had him on my show a couple times.
Oh, good. Okay. Yeah.
Yeah, he's a fun guy.
Where could people find you?
Yeah, so check me out on X at Will_Tanner_1. Check me out on YouTube at The Old World Show, where I do uh, apolitical history type stuff, and then at Substack at The American Tribune.
Where do you see yourself, in 2 years from? Where do you want to take all this? Any idea?
Um,
I'm hoping you
I'd
give
like
me a good idea because if you would have asked me, you throw me off.
I'd like to keep digging into the history stuff and some of what we can learn from it. One thing I find really fascinating are the couple families in Europe and America that have survived for hundreds of years and largely still embody the family mission or family purpose out of the Middle Ages or early colonial period. And I've really found digging into that and what they do and how they think about tradition rewarding. I don't have a fortune it lasted for 1,000 years, regrettably, but it's I find learning about that sort of person quite fun and rewarding and not like political neuroticism inducing. And so I've been trying to do more of that. And I think the combination of that and colonial sorts of history that's adventurous but also enlightening is the sort of stuff I'll be doing more of and thinking more about over the next couple of years.
Is this for your free time? I mean, is it hard for you to break away from this, or this is what you always prefer to be doing, is researching and reading new material and?
Yeah, I've always enjoyed reading a lot. So I do that anyway. I've been trying to spend less time on Twitter, which has been hard because I do a bunch of things on there now, but I found that is much less rewarding than it used to be, both because of the sorts of people who are on it a lot now and also just the algorithm is horrible right now. So I've been spending less time on that, more time on reading, and I found the process of creation to be extremely rewarding, whether it's writing an article or producing a video or recording a podcast. I found the act of putting something together and knowing that it's done well is a very rewarding experience and makes me more positive as a person. So I've been trying to do more of that because it's easy to get pulled into the pit of negativity.
It is, and even to get caught up into it and start putting out content in relation to that, and because at the end of the day too, you got to pay rent, right? And some of the sizzle sells, but so I'm trying to stay away from right now just the whole, I don't know, the good guys, bad guys, Trump behind the scenes, superhero, Avengers, because in my view, this is going to go on. It's going to go on long after you and I. The fight will never. This is not the fourth quarter of a football. That's my other line. This is not the fourth quarter of a football game.
You mentioned Chris Zeman earlier. One thing he always pointed out was that America did have a horrible immigration problem for the first quarter of the 20th century, with all the anarchists and socialists and just general terrible people pouring into the country from Central and Eastern Europe. And that ended when they blew up J.P. Morgan in 1924 at the big bombing of the building, or 1920, and then we got the 1924 Immigration Act. And America was a very pleasant place for a long time because of that. And you probably wouldn't have known that at the time. You would have just been depressed by the anarchists being awful in public. So who knows? But we could be at an inflection point like that. We're seeing sorts of people who you would never see get behind someone like Trump and certainly not be supportive of ICE or Border Patrol, doing so largely because they don't want to die or be taxed into oblivion. But that's positive. And Z-Man would always point out that as an inflection point. And I think it was a very good one and one that's worth thinking about right now is a reason for optimism.
I look forward to our next conversation, Will. I appreciate it. And thanks for speaking with me.
Yeah, thanks for having me on.
Mic drop.